Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back to the program, 728. And Chris Brintle is joining us. I guess today is Conspiracy Day.
Yeah.
I've been talking about the vaccine stuff, of course. It's big news. I mean, that thing's finally coming to a head. Now, where do you stand on this vaccine stuff? We'll actually get to a sports-related conspiracy here in a second, but where do you stand on the vaccine stuff?
Now, are you talking in general? I mean, do I get vaccines?
Well, yeah. I mean, first off, were you vaccinated as a kid?
I was.
Okay.
I think.
I think most people in your age range. I don't think the anti-vaccine started until maybe the late 90s, early 2000s. So,
look, the vaccine stuff. All the people. Jenny McCarthy came out years ago and said, "Oh, it causes autism." That was unproven. She didn't know that.
Well,
what she did is she caused a bunch of kids not to get vaccinated.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it was actually proven false.
Right.
Yeah. The scientist that did the study was caught falsifying his claims.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Jenny McCarthy, and then she was married to
Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey, who turned
crazy guy, hasn't been funny since '89.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. So they haven't done proper research on a lot of this stuff yet. Just because a celebrity says it doesn't make it true, but a lot of people believed her,
right?
And they followed that. But at the same time, even though I would have my kids get vaccinated, now I haven't had a flu shot in years. I don't think I need one. But at the same time, I understand being skeptical about getting it, because not everything your government tells you is true. And if you don't want to get vaccinated, and you don't want your kids to get vaccinated, then you shouldn't have to, because we're not supposed to live under force. You're not supposed to be forced to get vaccinated. There was a couple of weeks ago where somebody was forced to get chemotherapy for cancer. In this country, you're not free if they can force you to do chemo.
Well, and now you make a good point, and I think this is the point a lot of libertarian-minded people make about the choice. The problem is that if you're not vaccinated, you're exposing other people, and then it becomes a public health issue. I mean, I don't think anybody. The best way to compare it would be, we'll say laws against going to the bathroom in the street. Obviously, nobody wants to do that. Nobody would advocate that, because we all know, it spreads disease, just like back in the early 1900s when the 1918 flu epidemic. That's where all the spitting laws. I mean, it used to be normal for people to just spit in public. People would just spit on the ground, especially since so many people chewed tobacco back in those days. They would just spit on the ground, and so a lot of places passed anti-spitting laws. You don't want to force people to get vaccines, but what happens is, what do you do with them? You don't want them exposing other people. And I mean, if you want to live in your own house and you want to stay in your own property and you want to homeschool your kids, I mean, who's going to know, to tell you the truth? Who's going to know if you don't vaccinate your kids?
The government doesn't have they don't have the authority.
Yeah.
And it's not their role to protect anyone. That is not the role of government. It's not to protect you for health issues. They can't just ban stuff because they think it causes you harm. They can't just say, hey, you got to get vaccinated because we're concerned for everybody else. And they shouldn't be able to tell you, hey, you have to get chemotherapy to save your own life. That is not the role of the government. And I understand those small laws that to me aren't a big deal. Don't spit. You can't urinate in public. Those kind of things are what caused all this, and now they can control every aspect of your life, and it's getting out of hand. If you think the government's going to protect you, you're crazy. It's not going to. They can write every law they want to. It's just unbelievable. And the fact is, I think kids, like I said, I have my own kids get vaccinated if I did have kids, At the same time, if another parent says, hey, I don't trust what's in those vaccines, by all means, don't get your kids vaccinated.
Now, would you let your kids go around those kids?
Well, I mean, if I could stop it. But here's the problem. See, it's fear-mongering. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's people scaring you and saying, oh, your kids are going to get sick. Oh, if the kids don't get vaccinated. All they do is scare you into thinking they can protect you, and they don't want to protect you. They want to control you, and that's the whole issue with all of this.
Now,
and you either have freedom or you don't have freedom.
Yeah, blew up the lines on this one. I will say the problem, and I agree in a little bit of it. I agree with. We'll just say that. We'll go on in a second here, but the phones are burning up. So, will you be able to hear these? If you can't hear them, just plug in your headphones. News Talk 1270. You're on the air.
Okay, here's how simple it really is. If somebody is not vaccinated and they get, for instance, measles or Haemophilus influenzae B, HIB, I don't see what the problem is, why they shouldn't be allowed to be around people who have been vaccinated. Why? Because those people that have been vaccinated shouldn't get the disease now. But what happens? They do get the disease anyway. So what good is the vaccination?
Well, all vaccines aren't 100%. 100%, right.
Right. But I have a personal case that's going on right now with sick kids who got sick from a family who has had all of their vaccinations. The whole thing with the Disneyland measles thing has been so blown out of proportion because if you're worried about your kids getting measles, okay, you get them vaccinated for it. But half of the kids, at least, I would say, the parents that are screaming, well, it's all these ones that aren't getting vaccinations. They're going to cause my kid to get sick. Well, if they're vaccinated against the measles, they shouldn't get sick. But if they are getting sick, then what's the point of the vaccination? It's that simple.
Okay, hey, thanks for the call. And now, I mean, no vaccine's 100%. 90%'s better than 100%. I mean, or 90% is better than 0%, put it that way. We'll just go down the lines here real quick. Okay. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Hey, Don, how many cases were there in the U.S. in 14?
There were 600. There were 644.
Okay, so there's 644 cases of measles, and according to U.S. News, the U.S. population is 317,297,938. So, doing some simple math here, if I do 644 cases divided by 317,297,938. My calculator can't even go that high. So at that's ridiculous. At 30 million, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is 2. Well, I'm feeling really stupid right now, but that's 20,000th of 1% of people that have measles, compared to all the other epidemics, all the other childhood diseases, compared to childhood cancer. There's more childhood cancer than there is measles. Now, I'm not arguing for or against vaccinations. I think that's a personal choice, and I think it's handled properly now. If parents make the decision to not immunize their children, then in cases like this, like in California, 40 unvaccinated kids can't go to school. If they miss enough days of school that they have to repeat a grade, that is consequences of their parents' decision, and every parent has to make decisions that's right for their children that they can justify. So I'm not arguing for or against it. I think it's handled correctly in that if there is an outbreak, those kids stay home. That's fine. But it's not the government's position. I'll argue that for anything I'm for or anything I'm against. Their job is to create interstate commerce for us and protect us. And if they genuinely care about protecting us from measles and everything else, then shut the borders. If they genuinely cared about Ebola, then shut the borders.
Oh, I agree with that part.
Yeah.
So most times I agree with you, but today you are drinking the Kool-Aid.
Okay, well, now, okay, and thanks for the call.
The purple Kool-Aid.
Okay.
That's your favorite flavor.
Now, here's the thing. Before there was a measles vaccination, we talk about it's a minute number of people. It's 644 in 2014. That's in a nation of 320 million. That's a very minute number of people. The number in 2000 was 0, by the way. So there were 0 cases in 2000. However, at one time before vaccination was common, before we came up with vaccinations, the death rate, measles killed people. 30% was the death rate for measles pneumonia, which of course is the main complication from measles. I mean, people got pneumonia and people died. So, and this was adults that would catch pneumonia from measles and die. So, it's not a problem now, but the thing is, if you don't stay on top of it, it becomes a problem. And this is not where I want to go. I want to have, people in jackboots go around and stick needles in people's arms. But it's also a case where someone can spread the proper information.
But if they force you, they may not be running around in boots and sticking needles in your arm. But if they force you to do it, what's the difference? If you have to do it, what's the difference?
I don't think anybody's
saying
controlling
you.
Nobody's saying you should be forced to do it, but you can go out.
That's what you're saying.
Well,
because if you're saying that you have to get vaccinated, if the government says you have to get vaccinated, if the government says you have to do chemo, let me tell you something. If they want to protect us, they should just not let us drive. That's dangerous.
Cars are the most dangerous thing there is.
Yeah.
It's not the same as chemo though, because you can't give someone else cancer. That's the thing. It's not the same as I would never say force someone to take a treatment that's going to save their own life. I'm not going to even say to force someone to get a measles vaccine or flu shot or something like that. But you can. What are you going to do? I mean, are you going to let unvaccinated kids in school and not tell anybody? I mean, what do you do? Do you start putting them in separate classrooms? I mean, what do you have to do?
Well, that sounds better than forcing government forcing people to do it.
Well, it's not an easy answer. That's the thing. And what a lot of people sometimes they get small government mixed with no government. And,
right.
Yeah. And obviously it's definitely a complicated question because again, you don't want to force anybody to do anything, but I have no problem with public information campaigns. I don't even have any problem with publicly just saying, "Look, you're wrong with all the scare tactic stuff."
I don't mind public I don't mind that if they want to put PSAs out about it.
Yeah.
It is not their job to protect you.
Yeah,
if they can protect you and try to protect you from getting sick, if they can, if that's their role, then that means they control you. And that's just that simple. I think the question's easy.
Right.
So
okay.
you shouldn't have to do anything by force.
Okay.
Unless you're harming someone else, and I don't consider someone catching something really,
Well, except that it had a 30% death rate. News Talk 1270, you're on the air. Hello, you're on the air. Going, gone.
When did it have a 30% death rate?
The 1920s.
The 1920s.
Yeah, before
nobody dies from measles anymore
because of vaccines.
Because of vaccines, but that problem isn't here. You said it yourself. That problem isn't here anymore.
Not yet.
So we're just going to let them keep overstepping. That's the problem with this. That's why it's a slippery slope. That's why everybody always says, "Well, that issue's a slippery slope issue because if they control one thing, they'll control another."
Oh, it is. I agree with that. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Hey, calling back, and I usually don't do this, but
yeah, what's up?
Some interesting points we might actually, as a society, need to look at is, let's call it 100 years ago, just for nice round numbers. Your life expectancy was maybe 65. Now people are living into their late 70s, late 80s. okay, the retirement age for Social Security was based on the average death age, is what I heard, and that was based on a research program that was done, I think, in Germany around the 1920s, 1930s. But people don't really die from pneumonia anymore. I mean, we have progressed so far in our medical technology and how we treat people and general wellness. I mean, obesity is a different thing, and it seems like we have more cancer these days. But general wellness, I mean, people know better than to go outside and work when it's freezing and sleeting. Like George Washington died from, I believe it was pneumonia, because he was out riding a horse and got the sniffles, and he couldn't recover from it because their state of medical technology back then was practically nothing. And so, our first president died from an illness due to going out and playing in the rain.
Oh, yeah.
Basically. So I'm not going to say that people are stronger nowadays, but I think they're smarter when it comes to health aspects. We have the choice of how we treat our bodies, but the whole Obamacare or whatever it is, that choice is basically being taken away from us now, and it's the whole vaccination thing. It might have been started with good intentions, but it's kind of to the point where, it's like you do this or else we do something. They might not be guys in black with Fritz boots knocking on your door with an assault rifle to tell you, hey, you're going to get vaccinated today and we're going to do it for you. But there's other ways, now that everybody has to be registered and insured and all the rest of that stuff by law, or they can punish you with taxes, that they can withhold services. That's how the federal government puts pressures on state governments. You will do this in your state, or we will withhold highway funds, things like that. So, it is a slippery slope, but I think we need to rethink the whole idea of how much of the government needs to be telling us how to live our lives. And I know there's a lot of stupid people out there that not only should they not get behind the wheel of a car, but the choices they make in their lifestyles are just tragic. I mean, they lead to tragic consequences, and they're not the only people that are affected by it. Their children and the rest of their families, and sometimes strangers are affected by it.
And you make we're almost out of time here, but you make an excellent point, and I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing this, and I would not support this at all. But incentives, Obamacare forcing the insurance companies to punish people that don't get vaccines. I wouldn't support that. What I think we need to do with this is spread the information as much as possible that this is a safe thing to do. There's no law requiring everyone to have a TV, but everybody has a TV, right?
Right.
So
and here's the other thing.
And let the market take care of it.
Right. And here's the thing that I have with the people that say, well, you have to get vaccinated. All of those studies regarding child autism and being linked to vaccinations has been disproven. It kind of depends on whose train of information you're reading, because some people will say, well, this is it's not researched enough to be promoted as being safe. And that's the train I'm riding. And other people are saying, well, you could get measles and your kid could die. And I don't know anybody in life who's going to get out of it alive. You can't legislate people from dying. It's not possible.
Well, yes.
It's tragic that people die. Yes, it's especially tragic when it's a child that dies.
It happens to all of us sooner or later.
Right. But I think a little bit of this is, we want to keep everybody in a utopia, which is never going to happen. And so they legislate it.
Okay. Hey, we're completely out of time. Thanks for the call. You make some good points. We'll do some more of this after the top of the hour, but we are completely out of time. So we'll be right back. News Talk 1270 KIML.
The best local and national news and analysis. The Don Carpenter Show on News Talk 1270 KIML. You're listening to Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270, KIML. Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back to the program. It's 8:07. You know, I haven't even gotten to my sound clips yet, and we'll get to them here in a minute. If you're just joining us, we're talking a little bit about this dust up. Well, we'll just say a dust up. I think that's the best way to put it. Over measles vaccinations, of all things. You think you wouldn't be talking about this in the year 2015, but look, I mean, right now, it's not really a serious problem. Last year, 644 cases, which doesn't sound like a lot, except that it's 3 times what there was the year before, and 644 cases more than there was 15 years ago. In the year 2000, there were 0 cases. So this is actually, I mean, it's not a huge problem, but it does make for an interesting conversation, and it brings up a lot of issues. It brings up issues of personal freedom, which, I mean, this is something that I take very seriously. And I mentioned in the last break, I don't want guys with jack boots and gas masks going around sticking people with needles just to get them to get vaccinations. But I do think there's a proper role, and I think the vast majority of the role of government in something like this is just education and coordinating different states to make sure everybody's on the same page. That's what the CDC is supposed to do. I mean, they're supposed to coordinate. There's supposed to be a center where everybody can report everything, and then they can get the information. I mean, let's face it, people go across state lines every day, so there is a constitutional backing for that. I mean, it's interstate commerce. I mean, when you have people engaging in interstate commerce, they're exposing each other to different diseases. So here's the question. And you get a lot of these questions sometimes. What would happen if we just completely stopped vaccinating? Well, a lot of these diseases have disappeared. I mean, we don't see smallpox anymore. Smallpox is completely eliminated. We had pretty much eliminated measles. But what would happen if we just stopped? We stopped tomorrow. Somehow Jenny McCarthy became president and by executive order banned vaccinations. So that's in this crazy fantasy world that we're living in. If we stop vaccinations, so before the middle of the last century, and this is actually from the CDC, they actually addressed this. Diseases like whooping cough and polio and measles and influenza and rubella struck hundreds of thousands of infants, children, and adults in the U.S., just the U.S. Thousands, of course, died every year from these. As vaccines were developed and became widely used, rates of these diseases declined until today. Most of them are nearly gone. Nearly everyone in the U.S. got measles before there's a vaccine. Hundreds died from it every year. And again, the people that developed pneumonia from measles, 30% of them died. Today, most doctors have never even seen a case of measles. More than 15,000 Americans died from diphtheria in 1921 before there was a vaccine. Only 1 case of diphtheria has been reported to the CDC since 2004. An epidemic of rubella in 1964 and 65 infected 12.5 million Americans, killed 2,000 babies, caused 11,000 miscarriages. In 2012, 9 cases. And I assume none of those died. So it's not just you that's being protected by the vaccine. That's the point of this. Most of these diseases are spread from person to person, usually bodily fluids or touch or something like that. So if one person in a community gets an infectious disease, he can spread it to others who are not immune. But a person who is immune to a disease because he has been vaccinated, can't get that disease, and can't spread it to others. So the more people are vaccinated, the fewer opportunities a disease has to spread. So if you have the majority of the community, say you have 99.999% vaccinated, it's almost impossible to spread. If you have 98% vaccinated, that's a lot more people that can spread. So that's kind of how, that's kind of how it works. The more people you have unvaccinated, the easier it is to spread. And then, a lot of the people that are getting sick are too young for the vaccinations. A lot of, really young children and that kind of stuff. So, and it takes, it takes several years to get all the vaccinations that you need. And if you are, say you're a kid, you get caught exposed to someone who chose not to get vaccinated, then that's how this kind of happens. And that's what we're seeing here. It's interesting. It's funny, the political side of this. The attacks have been on the attacks on Rand Paul and Chris Christie for just mentioning that it's a personal freedom issue. However, almost all of the cases are lumped either on border areas or on the coast. It's you see these measles cases anyway. They're all up and down the east and west coast. There's a couple in Denver, a couple in Oklahoma City. There's a batch in Houston. There's a batch down near the border. But it's almost all border. It's almost all border areas and the coast, which is where the majority of the granola eating crowd that doesn't believe in vaccination lives. So the political side of it is what I find more interesting, and we'll actually delve into that in just a few minutes. We'll finally get to the sound clips, I promise. Next break. News Talk 1270 KIML.
He's a real American, fights for the rights of every man. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter Show. Hey, celebrate Valentine's Day at the Prime Rib Restaurant and Wine Cellar, Friday the 13th, and on Valentine's Day, that Saturday. Relax and enjoy their cozy yet elegant atmosphere while dining on their exquisite cuisine. Select from the tried and true prime rib, seafood, all their steaks, and other favorites off their regular menu, or choose one of the Valentine's Day specials. They'll have all kinds of specials for Valentine's Day as well. And let the staff assist you in selecting the perfect wine to complement your meal. They have something for everything. Valentine's Day at Gillette's Finest, the Prime Rib Restaurant and Wine Cellar. It is Valentine's Day, so you're going to want reservations. 682-2944. Okay, so let's wrap up the vaccine stuff. I have a couple clips before Chris joins us for sports. I mentioned Chris Christie and Rand Paul were the two that have been catching the most flack for these. So I'll just play a couple of these for you real quick, and we'll. Okay, well, you brought me. Are we supposed to be eating those? I don't think those are for us, are they?
Yeah, Melody bought them. She has said, "Hey, take one of these to DC."
Oh, they're not from the sales office.
No.
Okay, because I heard you've been taking Oreos from the sales office too.
Not true.
Not true. Okay.
Rumors.
Okay. Well, I want to talk about Warren Sapp, but I just want to play a couple of these clips real quick, and we'll take a call. We'll take a call real quick too. First up, Chris Christie.
All I can say is that we vaccinate ours, and so that's the best expression I can give you my opinion. It's much more important, I think, what you think as a parent than what you think as a public official. What I said was that there has to be a balance, and it depends on what the vaccine is, what the disease type is, and all the rest. And so I didn't say I'm leaving people the option. What I'm saying is that you have to have that balance.
Okay, and I know the audio was kind of hard to hear, but he says there has to be a balance between public safety and personal freedoms. And here's Rand Paul real quick.
Did you really just say to Laura Ingraham that you think most vaccines in this country should be, quote, voluntary?
Well, I guess being for freedom would be really unusual. I guess I don't understand the point, why that would be controversial.
Senator, maybe you're not aware, but there's a huge problem right now with Disney theme parks having to close down because of mumps. Not enough children being vaccinated against measles, mumps, and rubella because their parents, for whatever reason, have decided that it is voluntary. And I can tell you plenty of the people who I work with are really concerned about their kids getting sick at school.
Here's the thing is that I think vaccines are one of the greatest medical breakthroughs that we had. I'm a big fan and a great fan of the history of the development of the smallpox vaccine, for example. But, for most of our history, they have been voluntary. So I don't think I'm arguing for anything out of the ordinary. We're arguing for what most of our history has had.
Okay, and he goes on to say that education is the way you get it done. You don't get it done by forcing people, which, look, Rand Paul's a doctor. I mean, I tend to trust doctors when it comes to that kind of thing. The reporter on MSNBC CNBC was a little tried to box him in a little bit and tried to make it look like he was trying to force people, but that's not really where he was going with that.
She tried to make it sound like he was not for vaccinations at all, trying to make it sound like a crazy person, saying, hey, don't vaccinate your kids because it's unproven. That's what she was trying to do. It didn't work. Yeah. Now,
he did go on later and said that say some vaccines have some risks, but
and they do. Some do.
Some do, but again, you have to weigh the risks. I mean, I tend to trust the medical profession, and Rand Paul's a doctor, so he knows what he's talking about. I mean, he's an eye doctor, but he had to go to medical school. Okay, let's take this call real quick, and then we'll talk about Warren Sapp. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Okay, let me ask you this: if everyone had them, society would be safer, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, let's just make that statement about gun ownership and carrying a concealed weapon. Apply the same logic to it and see where you go.
Oh, well, I would fully support giving everybody guns.
Okay, giving everybody guns or mandating that everybody carry guns.
I see where you're going. I see where you're going with it. And again, I'm not saying that we should mandate vaccines either. I think we should promote them as much as possible, just like we should promote gun ownership as much as possible, too.
I agree, but here's the thing. I still think it's a personal choice. It's a very weighty personal choice, and I think everybody that's involved in society needs to educate themselves and make the choice based on either do I want to deal with the possible side effects of certain vaccines, do I want to deal with the possible side effects of carrying a deadly weapon in society, because accidents happen on both sides.
Okay, now, and here's the thing, though. A lot of the information that people are getting about vaccines is coming from sources that aren't so reliable, and that's where we kind of run into some problems, because there is a lot of misinformation out there.
There is on both sides on both aspects of it. Gun control, says, I'm not even going to go into what gun control advocates say about guns, but you can apply the same source, the problems with the source of that information, with a lot of the problems with the sources of vaccinations. I don't think there are too many cases where it is a clear-cut 100% thumbs up, go ahead, and there's not going to be any negative side effects on either side. I mean, carrying a gun, even by a law enforcement, okay, they're very well trained. Even in the military, they're very well trained. Friendly fire incidents still happen.
Oh, well, I mean, just last week there was a story with a cop shooting himself in the foot.
Right, and that stuff happens, and vaccinations are the same way. And so I think we're not going to ever get to, 100%
Well, and society
safety on either aspect. We're
Yeah.
not going to ensure a safe society by mandating either one of those ideas, either mandatory concealed carry and carrying a gun, because some people just aren't do it. Some people won't do it, and some people aren't really fit to do it. They don't have the mindset. Maybe they're not physically capable, or they're not mentally. We do have federal regulations that ban people that have been adjudicated mentally incompetent from carrying weapons or from possessing weapons. And I think a lot of the same thing, not necessarily the same, but some of that can be carried over into the vaccination area as well. Some kids with compromised immune systems, they need to go, the parents need to go through either, the vaccinations and see if this one has a higher risk of causing certain maladies or not.
Now you touched on something that's a very, very good point. The kids with compromised immune systems, sometimes they can get the vaccines. Now, the thing about that is the more kids with regular immune systems that are vaccinated, the safer those kids are with the compromised immune system. So, but you make a good point. I mean, I get where you're going with it, and you're making a good point.
Okay, well, I'll let you guys go and have the final word on this. It was good talking to you.
Hey, thanks a lot. We got one more call. If they're still with us, we'll let them have the final word. Then we'll do something a little bit more fun. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Yeah, I think everybody's forgetting, as anybody has known in the last 20 years that's raised a kid in Campbell County, is one of the most conservative states in the union. Try to register your kid and get him in school without proof of vaccination. It doesn't happen.
Well,
yeah. If you don't prove vaccination, you get threatened with your child being suspended from school.
Well, I don't know about, and I'm not quite sure where to go with that because, so that's the way they do it around here. I mean, you have to have the vaccination. I mean,
we already have forced vaccination. The most liberal form of government in any state is your school board and your school districts. They're the most liberal, and we already have a forced vaccination program just within our own school district in Campbell County.
It's because it's government run. It's
well,
public schools.
You could always homeschool. I guess that's their answer to it.
Yeah. So we already have forced vaccinations here.
Yeah. Good. See, I didn't know that the schools around here did that. I mean, I know most schools require vaccinations. I know, when I went to school, they required vaccinations. But again, homeschooling is more of an option now than it ever was. That's where I would go with that. I mean, if you don't want to get your kids vaccinated, fine. Homeschool them. Keep them away from my kids. Okay, so that's just where I go on that. So we'll do something a little bit more fun. Well, it's probably not so fun for Warren Sapp. You saw this story, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so for those that don't know, anytime there's a big event like the Super Bowl or the World Cup or anything where thousands and thousands and thousands of people come into a city, there's a bit of a problem with prostitution. Prostitutes come out of the woodwork. People that weren't even prostitutes start prostituting. And apparently Warren Sapp was arrested yesterday morning, I guess, after getting into a little bit of a scuffle with a couple prostitutes after the Super Bowl. And he was immediately suspended from his job at the NFL Network. Oh, no, they completely terminated his contract. First I heard he was suspended.
He was suspended yesterday. Now he's
completely fired. You're a Hall of Fame NFL player. Is he married? I don't know if I would assume he is, right?
I think he is. I think. I'm not 100% sure on that. I mean,
let me just double check that real quick. I mean, you're a let's see. He's got kids, but then again, he's an adult. I mean, he's in his he's married. So he's been married. He's been arrested for domestic battery too.
Mm-hmm.
At the Super Bowl, during Super Bowl coverage, he just does not work well at the Super Bowl. Apparently, he goes to Super Bowls and gets arrested. So, 2010, he was arrested while he was in Florida for the Super Bowl for domestic battery, and then this year arrested for soliciting a prostitute and assault. Well, I mean, obviously you got to. I'm not one of these people that automatically fire people, but this is one of the ones you got to fire him, right?
Of course you have to fire him. I mean, he's making the NFL Network look bad.
Yeah, that's, and maybe if it weren't an assault thing, maybe, but but apparently prostitution in Phoenix is a pretty serious charge.
Yeah, it is. I don't know that by experience, but I just have heard.
Well, apparently it's a 15-day mandatory sentence, and you know where he's going to end up going out to Tent City, Sheriff Joe's little place. I think that's the same county. So he's going to go out to Tent City and wear pink underwear and eat rotten bologna sandwiches for lunch.
That's not good.
No, for 15 days too.
Well, he deserves it. The guy's a lowlife. I mean, let's just put it out there.
Yeah. Well,
and a lowlife that was an analyst that, especially this year, had to talk about a bunch of players getting in trouble. So now he's a big hypocrite. He goes out. I don't like judging people as far as, like you said, the soliciting a prostitute. To me, that's immoral. On its own, I wouldn't necessarily want to come out and judge the guy and ruin his life over that. But it's the assault that really just that makes you a low life, and I hope he goes to prison for a while.
Well, apparently they had an argument over money, so I guess he beat up a couple of prostitutes over an argument over money. I mean, this is one of those things. I mean, I'd be the last person to say fire somebody, but for something like this, I mean, it's a pretty bad one. I mean, it's not as bad as Aaron Hernandez bad, but it's pretty bad. I mean, you gotta look at the image that he puts forth for the company, and the NFL. I mean, the NFL's had a lot of problems with stuff the last year. So they're not gonna mess around with this kind of thing anymore. I mean, you saw a player for the Ravens, or he did play for the Ravens. Terrence Cody was charged yesterday with animal cruelty. As soon as word came out a couple weeks ago that he was being investigated for this, they cut him. They cut him right off the bat before he was even charged. Apparently, he did something with a dog and dog died or something like that. I don't think it was dog fighting, but he left the dog outside or something like that. And he took the dog to the vet, tried to get the vet to fix the dog, but the dog died anyway. It was a big Mastiff dog. That's all I really know. But
left the dog outside
or something like that. I'm not quite sure exactly what the story is. Let me see if I can find it real quick. It actually
is an animal. I'm just saying.
Well, I'm actually gonna. This actually is just kind of a. While I'm bringing up the Terrence Cody story, 15 counts. Ooh, it's more than just one dog. Oh. Okay.
Dog fighting, probably. If you had about 15 dogs.
It doesn't say exactly what happened. This is just weird. He was charged with animal abuse involving a dog and an alligator.
Oh.
5 counts of animal abuse or neglect involving the same dog. It's a Mastiff dog. 2 counts of aggravated animal cruelty involving a dog. 1 count of illegal possession of an alligator. 5 counts of animal abuse or neglect involving the alligator. Drug paraphernalia and marijuana. So I think he was having an alligator fight a dog.
That's weird.
What it sounds like. Okay.
That is strange.
Okay, so it even gets
cut him.
Yeah, no wonder they cut him before the charges even came down. They must have gone to him and say, what's going on? We hear you're being investigated. Oh, I was having my dog fighting an alligator.
Wow.
But the NFL is not going to put up with any of this anymore. I mean, and
They shouldn't.
They shouldn't. I mean, it took them a while to come around finally dropping the hammer on guys that do stuff like this. And he'll go to court and he'll be he'll get his day in court,
and the players union will fight for him.
Well,
won't get any blame.
He wasn't expected to come back anyway. He's always injured, not really that good of a player. The union will probably try to get him some kind of a settlement, but in the end, the union's even going to have to stop defending these guys.
Yeah,
because it's gotten to the point where the league has taken so many hits on the nose that they're not going to put up with anything. Beating up hookers, alligators, nothing. I mean, you're not going to be able to do any of that, and it's good. I mean, they needed to clean things up. It took them long enough, but they finally came around. Now, I want to find out more of this story now.
That's a crazy story.
Where do you even get an alligator? I mean,
he must live. He went to Alabama, didn't he?
He went to Alabama. He lives in Alabama. I think he might even be from Florida. So maybe he had a little baby alligator and he grew it. He raised it in Baltimore. But I mean, I've lived there. There are no alligators in the wild in Maryland.
No.
There are no. I mean, I think maybe the farthest north you'll find a gator is maybe South Carolina, and that's kind of iffy. That is just the strange. That could be one of the strangest stories I've ever seen.
Yeah.
As far as NFL, it's even stranger than Warren Sapp beating up prostitutes.
Yeah, and the Warren Sapp thing. That kind of makes me upset for the simple fact that Warren Sapp, it just proves how fake someone can be on the air. Because when you watch Warren Sapp on TV, he seemed like a likable, nice guy.
Yeah.
He didn't. If he did have something happen in the past, it seemed like he
got over it.
He got over it, maybe turned it around a little bit, and then this happens.
Yeah. No. He's
it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, he's going to be out at Tent City for at least 15 days. It looks like, unless they come up with some kind of deal. But it's Maricopa County, Arizona. They don't really deal down there.
No.
This is probably the worst place you'd want to go.
Exactly.
So, and best of luck to Warren Sapp. He's going to have trouble finding a job after this one, at least for a while. So, what do we have going on in sports?
KIML football, KIML wrestling, and also national news.
No alligator fighting?
Not yet. This is the first I'm learning about this.
I don't think alligators would do well around here. They just freeze. News Talk 1270 KIML.
Basin Radio News, Fox News, Cowboy State News. More news than you can shake a stick at. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML. 70 KIML. 70 KIML. 70 KIML.